Okay, so in continuing our discussion of John Locke, in sections 4, 5, and 7, he gives us 3 more arguments that support his claim that our perceptions are produced in us by external objects that affect us through our sensory organs. I want to unpack each one. So, first of all, he says, those that lack the organs of any sense never can have the ideas belonging to that sense produced in their minds. And here's what he means by that. If you don't have eyes, then you never have visual sensations. And he concludes from that therefore those perceptions that are produced in us by external objects which are affecting us through our sensory organs. So he concludes that if you do have, say, visual perceptions, it must be that there's an external object acting on you through your eyeball. Now, as you can see, there's an unstated premise here which Locke has left out, which I'm going to use our modus ponens strategy to fill it in. And it's kind of a mouthful. But the basic idea here is that if people without eyes never have sensory perceptions, then it must be that the sensory perceptions that we do have are caused by external objects. Okay, now let's imagine that we're Descartes. And of course, Descartes has raised skeptical problems about the causes of our sensory perceptions. What's Descartes going to say to premise 2? Well, he's going to question premise 2 here. And here's I think what he's going to say. He's like, look, isn't it possible that premise 2 is false? Isn't it possible that there's an evil demon that gives visual delusions to all the people who have eyeballs, and audio delusions to all the people with ears, and olfactory delusions to all the people with noses, right? So the mere fact that only people with eyeballs have sensory perceptions doesn't seem to guarantee that their eyeballs are giving them accurate sensory perceptions, or that those perceptions are coming to them from the external world or objects in the external world. Maybe they just have eyes for decoration, and this evil demon is just planting sensory perceptions in their head. Why not? Why not think that? Let's move on, though, to Locke's second argument here in section 5. He says, sometimes I find that I cannot avoid having these sensory ideas produced in my mind. So the idea here is, look, when your eyes are open, you can't help but see what's right there in front of you. It's not under your control. And he concludes that therefore those perceptions must be produced in us by external objects which are really out there acting through our senses. Now again, there's an unstated premise which we need to fill in if this is going to be a valid argument. And it's this. If I cannot avoid having sensory ideas produced in my mind, then those perceptions are produced in us by external objects acting through our senses. Now again, though, let's imagine that we're Descartes. And Descartes' going to ask, why would we think that premise 2 is true? Couldn't an evil demon force these false sense perceptions upon me? Okay, so what? When I open my eyes, I can't help but see a computer screen. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's actually a computer screen causing that perception. It could be that an evil demon is forcing me to have that sense perception. So it seems like Descartes is not quite answered yet. Let's move on to the third argument. Locke says, our senses, in many cases, bear witness to the truth of each other's report concerning the existence of sensible things without us, that is, sensible things outside of us. So here's the idea. You can touch the same things that you see, right? And your touch sensation matches up with your visual sensation of that same object. And so forth. You can smell, say it's an apple, you can also maybe smell it and taste it. It seems like all of your senses confirm each other. And Locke concludes that therefore those perceptions must be produced in us by exterior causes affecting our senses. Again, what's the unstated premise? Well, it's that if our senses bear witness to the truth of each other's report concerning the existence of sensible things outside of us, then those perceptions must be produced in us by external causes. Now again, what's Descartes going to say to this second premise? Well, he's going to ask again, why should we believe that that's true? Couldn't an evil demon give us false visual perceptions that agree with our false tactile perceptions, right? So can't the evil demon make me be able to feel the same chair that I see? And neither one of them are there. I'm in the matrix. Why think that they're caused by real external objects? All right, so we've got Cartesian objections to all of Locke's arguments. Well, does Locke realize that he hasn't really answered the Descartes? He does realize that. And here's how he wants to come back around and address it in section 8. You ask, how do we know that these sense ideas are not just a dream or caused by an all-powerful deceiver rather than by real external objects? Locke he admits, look, I can't rule out the possibility of situations like that. I've got no knockdown argument that there's not an all-powerful deceiver. But, he says, I don't need to have that kind of knockdown argument in order to still have a justified trust in my sense perceptions. I don't need to be able to rule out beyond all possibility of error that there's no evil demon or that I'm not dreaming. He says the certainty of things existing in nature, in reality, when we have the testimony of our senses for it, is not only as great as our frame can attain to, but as our condition needs. So look, he says, the information given to me by my senses is the best that as a human being I can do. Okay? But it's also as much as I need. I don't need Cartesian certainty. Descartes has set the bar for knowledge way too high. You're right, I can't meet it, but I don't need to. We should be serious here and take for granted that our senses are giving us the truth.